and activated Vermont Public Libraries. Nice to have you here again. And if you want to, Catherine, kick us off with any response, anything you want to say, any amendments, any suggestions.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm very happy to return to the Senate Education Committee. And I'm going to provide some feedback on behalf of the Department of Libraries.
Do we have it written also?
You do have not every word of it, but a pared down version,
Great.
which I reference the specific language in the bill. So my name is Catherine Delneo. I'm the state librarian and the commissioner of the Department of Libraries. Our thought collectively is that I'll share the department's perspective, and then there are also folks here from the Vermont School Library Association and the Vermont School Library Association and the Vermont Library Association, each of which have slightly different perspectives and different focuses from the department, who will also provide feedback, and then we would be happy to answer questions. So the department appreciates the strong support of the senators. Let me start over. The department appreciates the strong support that the bill's proponents have offered to libraries in Vermont. And many aspects of the bill, S220, relate to the recommendations of the working group on the status of libraries in Vermont directly. Those recommendations were based on more than 2 years of listening to the community. And the working group's membership included leaders both from the Vermont Library Association and from the Vermont School Library Association. I provided you with a document that you have access to, which outlines the department's position on each element of S220, and I'll review key points of that document with you now. The department offers its strong support for amending statute to require that all public libraries adopt policies for the selection and reconsideration of materials that complies with the First Amendment, the Civil Rights Act, and state laws prohibiting discrimination in places of public accommodation. The department has a kind of a footnote here. There's a bill that is moving in the House, through the House that.
I'm going to interrupt for one moment. It looks like, Morgan, the senators are going to give you a copy. So why don't you give everybody a copy, unless it's in our folders today.
Sorry.
220.
Oh,
220. Great.
Thank you. There is a bill related to school library collection, development, and reconsideration policies that I want to draw to your attention. It's in the House. It's House Bill 807. And these two bills are similar and seem to relate to one another. And the department would recommend that, if possible, the legislature align the language in both bills. And the department's preference is the language in this bill related to collection, development, and reconsideration of materials. The department is generally supportive of amending statute to empower the department to develop model policies for public libraries. Then library boards around the state could choose to adopt those policies that are model policies wholesale, or they could revise them to meet the needs of their local communities. So we really look at collection development and reconsideration policies as a local matter. We're happy to provide guidance to libraries, though, about best practices. So we are supportive of the model policy areas of the bill. We're also very supportive of an amendment to statute that would require the department to adopt a collection development policy. We have an existing collection development policy, which we were already in the process of updating it, and we are happy to update it so that it reflects diversity of race, ethnicity, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, and disability status, and Vermont's diverse people in history. Just a note on this, that language aligns with statute related to the state curator's collection development policy that already exists. The department offers its strong support for amending statute to lower the age of confidentiality of public library records from 16 years of age to 12 years of age. This change would align the age of confidentiality in public libraries with the age at which youth may make medical decisions on matters of drug and alcohol abuse treatment and mental health treatment independently already.
What section are you on?
I am on page 9, line 7.
And we have your written response here. So looking at your written response, your testimony.
In the written response,
Yep.
I am on the top of page 2.
Yep, got it.
Got it? Okay, great.
Probably best to stick to your written testimony.
Okay.
This document.
So to read this rather than.
Yeah, I
annotate it?
think so. I mean,
Okay, it's going in the same order.
as long as it's in the same
It's in the
order,
same
yeah,
order.
great, because we just don't have a copy yet in front of us, so
Okay,
just know that. while we're
understood.
talking.
I can also share my written version of it
Be great.
after. So let's see. So.
Section 7.
Section 7, the department supports Governor Scott's fiscal year 2025 budget, which does not include the positions enumerated in this section. On training and education for library staff, the department supports the inclusion of an obligation, changing a word may to a word shall, related to continuing education for library directors and library staff and statute. We also welcome language that would empower the department to provide the certificate in public librarianship program for library directors. We already do that work, but it would be good to have that in statute. Just an aside here, if you flip forward slightly to page 4, number 4, establish continuing education requirements for public library trustees. This is also a continuing education topic. The department is not in favor of this addition to statute. We already offer public
So again,
library.
just direct us to this.
I am, yeah,
Okay.
page 4,
Okay,
number 4 at the top.
got it.
Yes, thank you, and thanks for slowing me down. The department currently offers training for public library trustees and will happily continue to do so. Adding requirements about that might be more appropriate to embed in statute related to trustees and their roles and responsibilities. The department has not had success in getting all of the 935 library trustees to take our regular trainings, and I think it would be quite challenging to make sure that they show up for trainings and to track their compliance with that statute. Moving back to the public safety section on page 2, the department supports the amendment to criminal threatening, which already pertains in municipal public libraries. The update would appropriately provide enhanced protections to those in incorporated public libraries. The department doesn't have an opinion at this time on the proposed amendment related to the possession of a dangerous or deadly weapon in a public library setting. The department plans to research this topic more thoroughly as it questions the constitutionality of the proposed change, given that public libraries are public facilities. So then looking at library governance, which is the next subject at the bottom of page 2, the department generally supports these amendments to library governance and has provided some language that might improve clarity in the sections, clarifying that the public library board adopt policies. Right now, it has language related to directors, which people might think are the library directors, even though we know that the intention is the board of directors, the trustees. It's important to note that 30% of public libraries in Vermont are not municipal public libraries, and that this section, my understanding is that this section on library governance is specific to municipal public libraries and would not have any impact on incorporated public libraries.
Could you just make that distinction for me?
Sure. In Vermont, there are 2 types of public libraries. They both provide the same service, and when you're in your community, you may not even know what the governance structure is of your public library. For example, here in Montpelier, our public library is the Kellogg Hubbard Public Library. I believe they are an incorporated public library. They receive municipal appropriations, but they are an incorporated entity, a nonprofit public library. So in statute around public libraries, there's a section about public libraries, and there is the first section at the top is about incorporated public libraries, and the second is about municipal public libraries. The way that this is revised would only impact the specific sections and lines that are cited in this bill would only impact municipal public libraries and would not make a difference with relation to the establishment and maintenance or the appropriations or the trustees that are, so the bill is I'm just focusing that attention because you might otherwise not be aware of that distinction. The department's files show that approximately 70% of the public libraries are municipal and about 30% are incorporated. And they do provide the same service, they both provide free service, and it's really just a matter of how they were originally yeah. And the incorporated public library is not a part of municipal government, but typically receives municipal appropriations through town meeting. Moving on to the section on the Department of Libraries, section 15. The department is in favor of the amendment to section 606. The department has some questions about the legislature's goals with this section and what the impacts would be for public libraries if they didn't comply with minimum standards established by the department. There are currently minimum standards from 1986 that the department had established, and they are all recommended. The department's perspective is that if we're simply making recommendations, then the rulemaking process may not be necessary, and it may actually get in the way of our work with our regular library community. We're happy to develop model policies. We're happy to set some benchmarks or baselines based on tiers. We like that approach, but rulemaking is a somewhat cumbersome process.
Right.
And so we're wondering if there's another way to address this, since most of what the bill is addressing is really a recommendation. And since the aspects related to collection development are covered in another section of the bill. So that we would say it might be a more simple approach to just empower us to set the model policies, to adopt model policies, and to establish some recommendations of service levels by tiers.
So that's section 5 you're talking about, other duties?
Section 16.
Section 16,
16.
on page 3, under the Department of Libraries. Let's see. Just trying to make sure I covered everything. I want to call out something on the first page of my handout to you, which is around the licensing of electronic literary products. This is a very complex topic, and I'm frankly having trouble understanding the implications and what would happen if this bill were passed in this way. I think that the bill would definitely have impacts for our contracts at the Department of Libraries and potentially for public libraries, school libraries, academic libraries all around the state. And I don't understand exactly how that would play out over time. When the working group made its recommendation, we really were thinking about access. We want to increase access, and we know that that funding is tight everywhere, and Vermonters want to keep their tax rates low, and we know that it's hard for us to buy books and to buy electronic resources too. The department's very concerned that if we move quickly on this legislation, we might have some unintended consequences. And we would encourage a little bit of a slower roll on this so that we really think about it in terms of what's the intent that we have. And maybe could our legislators and others in the region, other states, do things in concert? Vermont has a really small market share. And to be frank, I'm a little concerned that publishers would just not sell to us. And that some language in this bill makes me wonder if they didn't sell to us at the same price as the public consumer, would people like Chair Campion, who uses Audible, would you be impacted? I don't actually know.
It's most important.
Yeah, we want to keep your access to ebooks strong. So
No, I really appreciate raising it. We have Mr. Sherman in the room who's going to come in next week to represent the industry and have a conversation with us about that. And
yeah.
also concerned about what the unintended consequences. Yes, and Sheila.
Thank you, Chair. As a co-lead sponsor of this bill, I agree that this is a very complicated area. So I would not be opposed to removing it, but I'd have to discuss it with the other lead sponsor. But could you possibly suggest some language that focuses strictly on access, which is really, it sounds like that's what you're looking for. So could you suggest language?
I think Potentially, yes. I think that what's really important is that we want to ensure that Vermonters have access to these materials, ebooks, e-audiobooks, and also our digital databases, our online databases that include digitized books
Right.
often. So we want to be sure that we have that. I think that the concern is really that the industry has two different price points and that we're rebuying books again and again and again, which really is impacting our collections budgets and kind of putting the squeeze on librarians. So I think the department supports any way we can improve that dynamic and would encourage our colleagues in the industry to really consider that.
Yeah, my sense is that this is a world that's gonna keep changing and morphing and evolving, and so we have to sort of stay, supple in how we react to it as well, so, thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Would you mind sharing just a little bit what's happening right now in libraries as it relates to this? Would you remind?
I actually think it might be good to
Okay,
hear from a library,
Great,
one of
okay,
the libraries
great.
themselves, and I know that some of my colleagues are prepared to speak to that.
terrific.
I just wanna share one thing, and I forgot to include it in my notes about, Chair Campion, you had asked me, what does this bill miss? And there's an important thing related to the work of the Department of Libraries. The working group recommended, and I will provide you with my written notes and I will
Okay,
update this
great.
for you. There is an important aspect of statute related to the department that says that the department shall be the primary access point for state information and provide advice on state information technology policy. The working group recommended that because we now have 211, we now have the internet, the other departments, the legislature, nobody comes to the Department of Libraries asking us to review the information architecture or what's on your web pages, that this is really outdated and it could be removed with no impact to information to the state and would align better with our staffing levels and our capacity, and no one would have this expectation. I, of course, would be happy to continue to serve on any board and provide technical assistance, as I always have. But this bit of statute doesn't align with today. This is a credible speaker
Which
statute.
section is that?
It is, it's not on here at all, but it's chapter 22, section 606.
I didn't need to know about it.
No.
Nobody does. And when I can't find things on that are parts of the state's information, I always, note that I wouldn't have done it that way. I think I made a comment to my colleagues about that yesterday.
Senator Weeks.
Thanks, sir. I'm just curious. So my understanding is the bill is essentially in reaction to the library study that was conducted. Was that an element of the library study? Did that come out of the findings?
It was, yes. Yeah, it's
Is there essentially a reason why that wasn't included?
I don't know.
it's on page 23 of the working group report. Yeah, it was just a suggestion to remove it from statute. And I think, I do want to say before I pass things over to my colleagues, that I do really appreciate the attention that Senator Gulick and Senator Hardy have paid to the recommendations of the working group. The library community engaged in a very in-depth process over 2 years, and as the chair of that body, I have to say it is really meaningful that you are listening, that you are trying to help us to provide the best service that we can. Public libraries, academic and school libraries in the state, and we really appreciate this opportunity to share with you areas where what seem to be pretty minor changes could have a significant impact. So I appreciate your time today. I live right here in town. I'm happy to come back to talk about this all, if anything, in more depth that's in the bill. But my colleagues who came from further away, I want to move off this.
Any final questions for Ms. Delnado? Thanks a million.
Of course, thank you.
Hey, wanna come up, Ocean?
Yeah.
So nice to see you. Could you please come up from Bennington today?
Yeah.
Great.
So lovely to be here. Thank you all so much. For the record, I'm Oceana Wilson. I'm the president of the Vermont Library Association and the dean of the library at Bennington College. I will pick up on what we just talked about, which was electronic literary products. So page 5 and 7, section 162 and 163. The Vermont Library Association is very concerned about the importance of ebooks and e-audio to Vermonters. These play a critical role in providing access, given the ruralness of Vermont and winter travel for many of our people, being able to access these books and audio online are essential. It also plays a significant role in vulnerable populations, such as vision impairment and early and helps with early and reluctant readers at a young age. Often audio is seen as an entryway in. So while we are grateful for the attention in this bill and believe it's important, we would also ask that there be a pause in that we are not sure this legislation as written will have the effect and the impact that we are looking for. So we are in agreement with the Vermont Department of Libraries group. In a second, and also Mary, the Vice President of BLA, is going to share further. So I'm doing part of the BLA response and she'll do further. The Vermont Library Association would like to express very strong support for Section 67, Public Libraries Statement of Policy Use of Facilities on page 7, and Section 69, Public Libraries Section and Consideration of Library Materials, page 8. I would like to extend appreciation to Senator Hashim for reaching out on behalf of his constituencies, raising the concerns that we are seeing across the country in attempts to censor and challenge material. 2023 was the highest rating of book challenges in the past 20 years, as recorded by the American Library Association. And we're starting to see similar increases in programming challenges. We feel that these two sections provide very strong and clear support that libraries must act within the Civil Rights Act, the First Amendment. The freedom to read for all Vermonters is so essential that we cannot allow a voice or single group of voices to decide for individuals what they want to read and what they want to think. And we feel that that's a very strong and important protection. And we are very grateful for the addition to this. Our colleagues at VSLA, the Vermont School Library Association, and the Vermont Library Association recently issued a Vermont Freedom to Read statement based on the assurance that all Vermonters can exercise this fundamental freedom. So we're very grateful for those additions and strongly support that. Thank you.
Great. Any questions for Ms. Wilson? Good. Great, thank you very much. Mary, is it Danko?
It's Mary Danko, yeah.
Great.
And I'm the director at the Fletcher Free Library in Burlington, Vermont.
Great.
But I do want to say I was also the director at the Weathersfield Proctor Library in Vermont, which was 856 square feet. And I was a one-person librarian there, and I was also the librarian in Heartland, Vermont. It was a small library. So I feel like I have good experience across different size libraries.
And Ms. Danko, did somebody tell you that this is a tough committee?
Yes.
Yeah,
the-
that
the
is
nice
just
gentleman
not
that's over there.
true. Like the
No.
nicest group of people.
I'm shaking in my boots
You know,
right now.
I heard you may have said something like that.
He did.
Yeah.
And he did.
I mean, we're talking a good way, but
Yeah.
this, yeah.
He said he was a real library supporter, though, and
He is a real
remembers-
library. He is a real library.
He
He's
remembers
terrific.
bringing internet to libraries a long time ago.
Yes, he's taking credit for all sorts of things.
Well, thank you for
We're excited
like,
you're here.
I'm so glad to be here, and grateful for all the hard work with the working group and the bill, and there's a lot here. There was just a couple things I wanted to speak to, and one was section 172, which was the confidentiality piece, and lowering the age to 12. We are so in favor of lowering that age for a variety of reasons. Personally, I'm gonna sometimes put on my Fletcher Free Library hat as Fletcher Free Library Director. I would even love it to be lower. I think, as Oceana was saying, we really believe in the freedom to read, and we trust the reader. And we know that children as young as 8, 9, and 10 are sometimes getting material from the library that has been curated by library professionals that has great meaning and impact on their lives. Some of these children are going through really tough times. They are really struggling, and credible vetted information that's provided by their public library in a private way is very, very important to them. So I hope this is a section that we continue to look at, and the Intellectual Freedom Committee, which is part of the Vermont Library Association, has not had a chance to weigh fully in on this, but we are digging deeper with them.
So Ms. Danko, tell us what this would do that's not happening right now by lowering the age.
Right now, if a parent came in and a child who was 15 had a book out that said something like, maybe the topic was about incest or sexual abuse, or maybe it's just something like their parents are going through a divorce, or they think their parents are going through a divorce. There's a wide range. Their parent could ask to see their library record.
I see.
So the mom could come in and say, I want to know what my son Johnny's been taking out, and we would have to provide that information. It's not private for them. By lowering the age, their record is private.
Senator,
Thanks, sir. What's the current age?
It's 16.
and I may be wrong, but Ms. Delneo, last week, or when you were in here last, did you say that in some states there is no age? Is that accurate?
That is
Like-
correct.
Okay.
Yes, there are a number of states with no age listed at all. The working group had a lot of discussion on this topic, and ultimately consensus was around lowering it to 12 because of specific legislation in Vermont related to alcohol abuse treatment and substance abuse treatment, which children who are 12 years of age and older can make autonomous decisions. They can independently make decisions about going to the doctor, going to a medical professional and getting help for those conditions. And also, I'm trying to think of, I'm missing one more topic, but there's medical abuse treatment, substance abuse treatment, and STD treatment, and also topics like if they went in and a child was in the terrible situation of being in an abusive relationship and they were making reproductive decisions. Those things are all already enshrined in statute, and so lowering the age to 12 to align with that seemed like it would be a good match, because if the child can make a decision, we want them to make an informed decision using vetted resources, not just Googling it and hoping for the best with the information that they get. The information from the public library would be of a higher quality, would be selected by professionals, would be factual. And to just mention for those who weren't here last week, one of the senators you had mentioned something about the databases. When we have database contracts in libraries, that information is typically not available to other people, but the child, if they logged in with their library card, their saved searches and things like that could be seen by their parents. So I just wanted to add that qualification around the database searching.
The American Library Association has a whole page and it has all the different state statutes on it. But yes, there are many states that have no age limit at all.
Please, Senator.
Is there average age or a median age or something like that? I mean, to reference a few states that have none, I'm just curious what the other side is.
I would have to do that research. This morning, I think I looked at California, Maine, and Montana all have no ages.
I believe New Hampshire, I'm sorry.
And New Hampshire,
I believe
and New Hampshire,
also
thank you.
has-
I worked in New Hampshire, should know that, yes. Yeah.
Massachusetts.
I believe Massachusetts as well. It's a good intern project. I need to go to it. The other topic is section 4004, which is about adding libraries and not having weapons on site. We have not had enough chance, I think, as an association to delve in on this. I think some of us that are in more urban environments would welcome this. I think some places that are in more rural environments are not quite sure. What I will say that I think we're grateful for is that the working group heard that safety is an issue in public libraries right now. I think I'm a little late in sharing some of the stats that I brought from Fletcher Free Library, but we are seeing an increase of incidents where we are trespassing people. We have a very robust ordinance, and depending on the egregiousness of the behavior, we can trespass someone, and it's just gone through the roof. People are in, as you know, in challenging situations, and they are acting out in ways that is just not appropriate. And we're trying to keep our staff safe, and we're trying to keep the other people using the library that is safe. So thinking about those things in terms of how we can help keep libraries safe is something we really want to keep working at. And I would say, am I able to say something that's not on here?
Sure.
Okay, I guess
Yeah.
the one thing that public libraries don't have is sustainable funding, and I know that's not so much in your purview on this bill, but is something that when I have a chance at this table, I would like to bring it up. And something specific that has really been highlighted over the past year is funding for our capital projects, our improvements, our remodeling, and even new libraries. And we've gotten some great ARPA money that's coming down that the wonderful Department of Libraries is going to be giving out through a grant process. But as they will tell you, when they did the needs assessments for what our libraries need, they're not gonna even make it with $25 million that you're set to give away between the two funding sources that are coming. So how that would help us is if we knew there was reliable funding for these capital projects, that would free up money for us to take care of our safety needs, to take care of our collection needs, because we wouldn't be so worried about the maintenance and upkeep of our basic infrastructure. So it would be really great to build and improve on the wonderful start that we have with this funding that's coming. Massachusetts does a great job of it. They've set aside that funding. They have linked it with LEED certifications as well. So when these projects come on, there's
Yeah.
somebody at the table that's saying, make it sustainable as well. So that's my parting gift to them.
I appreciate it. We're struggling also as construction issues with our schools, so many buildings in this state.
We just want a little bit of online gambling money.
Well, I appreciate it coming with actually a source.
Well, I will
Yeah.
tell you, when we see
Yeah.
that things that come down the path
Yeah.
that have addictive qualities to them,
Mhm.
and then really start to have impacts on our social, social service structures, the library's there.
Mhm.
We're the ones that are seeing these folks that are then down and out because of this stuff.
Yeah.
So to me, there is a
Yeah.
relationship.
I appreciate you saying that as well. I think just speaking for myself, I'm not in libraries as much as I used to be. I'm sure that's true with a lot of people. And you forget that, yes, indeed, there's so many resources in there, and that people who are in need of some mental, social, physical support arrive there at your doorstep as well. So appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. DeBritz? Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Great. And just, I think we're doing okay. We have about 20+ minutes.
Right, thank you.
Not just for you.
Oh,
Just to-
in my case, I'll keep it brief. Thank you all for having us here today and talk about this S220. My name is Charles DeBritz. I'm a middle school librarian in Burlington. It's my 9th year as a librarian and my 22nd as an educator, mostly in the States. It's most of my 3rd year at the executive board of Vermont School Library Association. I'm here with our co-president. If you're not already aware, we're the professional organization for school librarians. We have about 200 members in the state. We want to thank the working group and all the work that they did and for the proposals in this work.
And I should also point out, Senator Gulick is a former librarian as well, not only a teacher.
And a
but-
school board member.
Yeah, school board.
So, thank you for your service.
We haven't celebrated Senator Gulick enough today. We just want to.
So thank you so much for doing that. And we have a couple provisions that we like to speak of from the school library point of view. The first is not in our written comments, but it was mentioned, and that's in relation to House Bill 807, which is about material selection policies in school libraries. And the Vermont School Library Association supports that language that as it's written. And we would hope that as it comes together, it is different because that is about working with our school boards, and the language in here is for our public library. So I think they mirror each other, but they could be different, probably should be different. Other provision specifically to S220 that we'd like to talk about or at least reference, and librarian comments about ebooks, not ebooks. And we don't know specifically if this is the answer to that. And I wrote in my comments about some of the challenges that schools specifically face because of that. But we would hope that any help the legislature can provide in this area would impact us schools and public libraries and all of us, not just like one piece of the library world. So that's just something that we're looking forward to eventually. The second area, and maybe most important for us, is the addition of the school library consultant position in the Agency of Education, and on the bill, page 9, section 7. This is something we believe, again, could have a tremendous impact on Vermont school libraries. This type of position existed in Vermont for many decades, actually from the late 1960s up to the early 2000s. And I outlined some of the things that the position formally did for us as a consultant. That was a little before my time in the library, but we recognized the value that that position had. And especially having a library advocate in the Department of Education was instrumental in establishing the requirement in 1999, 2000 educational quality standards that every Vermont school has a librarian. And we're fortunate to live and work in a state that recognizes the importance of school librarians. And my colleague and co-president, Rebecca Sofferman, will talk a little bit more about the importance of that position for us, what we think that could do, and for our school libraries. So if you would.
Thank you very much for this. I have a question about that. Because we generally like to look at what's happening in the AOE and get an understanding of what's going on there and what their capacity is, resources, et cetera. I know there is no dedicated position as liaison. Is there someone though in the AOE that is sort of a go-to person for school librarians? When I was a librarian, I don't remember that, but I wonder if you have any.
With the lack of this position, we reached out to the AOE in adoption for our school library standards, which have not been adopted yet, but we're hoping to be adopted. And we've had a liaison, well, not in the way that this position would be created, but someone that we meet with, Lisa Helm, the AOE. And she's great, but her background is not in libraries.
What's that again? Is it
Helm.
Okay.
The position, although it's not created, like the way that we envisioned some of the things they could do, that's a lot more than they, I think, have the positions for.
Any final questions? Did I cut you off?
No,
For sure, okay.
I'm gonna pass it off to Rebecca.
All right, soften it. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Hi,
Hi.
I'm Rebecca Sofferman. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. I'm librarian at Colchester Middle School, and I'm the co-president of the Vermont School Library Association. I've been a librarian for 15 years. The first 7 of those from New York State, and in New York, they have these, they're called Board of Cooperative Education Services. And it is like a regional kind of cooperative that they share all kinds of services. And each of those regions has a library director. So in my early years as a librarian, I had this position that was, they supported new librarians. It was incredible as a new librarian to have somebody to support you. And they also provided a lot of services. I'm going to outline what some of those things would be for our position. But it was a similar kind of a thing as what we're talking about. When I came to Vermont 8 years ago, back to Vermont, but I really missed that, and I've missed it ever since, because we don't have that specific support. And I don't want to discount the Department of Libraries and how helpful the Department of Libraries is, but it is, the school library is a little bit different in the way that we work, and specifically that we also are teachers, and so we are really governed under the Agency of Education. So having somebody specifically in that agency will be really, really critical. And when we met with Lisa Helm, after the working group report came out, she asked us, what is the number one thing out of here that would benefit you? And we, hands down, this position of a library consultant. One of the reasons why that was
Yes, I'm not talking about BOCES.
Yeah, no, I just, that's the number one
Yeah,
thing that was.
That's the number one thing for the school library.
Yeah,
that
no,
we
sure,
felt
sure.
was really coming from the whole report. So we were so happy to see that still, as the really critical thing. So for school librarians, we're usually the only person in our building that does what we do. We're the only person who files certification. It's very common to be the only one who's been in our district sometimes. And so there isn't as much, support as maybe other teachers have for their discipline and for all their needs. Districts in more rural parts of the state are finding it difficult to fill library positions right now. And teachers and community members without library training are being put into those roles in many, very frequently. And they're expected to just start running the library right away. And they are usually immediately enrolled in the UVM courses to get their certification. That's a 2-year process that they have to go through.
So, sorry to interrupt, so that's 2 years full-time?
No,
No,
they take
Spread
one
it,
course
take
at
them
a time.
classes,
Yeah.
okay. And you end up with a master's degree,
No,
or is it, it's a
It's
certification?
just a certification.
Okay.
So what's happening is frequently it's somebody who's maybe a teacher in that school.
Yeah.
They can't fill the position. They ask somebody to come into that role and they just have no library background at all. They have the education background, but they don't have the librarian, which is, not the same. And so it's really hard for these people, and that's just sort of one example for the new librarians. So a lot of the provisions in S 220 pertain more to school librarians, or to public libraries, but for us, we recognize this as vital to our mission to have this school library consultant. So these are some duties that we came up with that we think that could be beneficial, not just to new librarians, but to all school librarians. One of them would be to facilitate the adoption of our standards, which came out in 2018. These are national standards. I don't know if, I'm sure you're aware as an education community, but all disciplines have their own sets of standards that they have to abide by, that guide how they teach, what they teach, how they teach in their discipline. So these are our standards for our discipline. And so these have not yet been adopted. Vermont students consequently don't have equitable access to learning these information literacy skills. The position can protect students' freedom to read by making sure all school districts have updated library selection policies and reconsideration of materials procedures guided by the intellectual freedom policies from the American Library Association and the Vermont Freedom to Read Statement. Yes.
That is in the bill though, correct? This language, isn't this in the bill?
Right, and I wanna reiterate kind of what Charles said in that, school libraries have a slightly different way that those challenges would come into play and the way that would impact schools, because we have school boards. And I know libraries have library boards, but like the language of H 807 is very specific to schools and how things would kind of proceed in this school library setting in a district when those challenges happen. I do agree that it's important in all libraries to have those material selection policies. So if there is a way to kind of align the language and still keep the specific language that has to do with school boards, I think that it's all important. If it's helpful and how more powerful to have that combined, then. Then the next thing would be like assess school library program assessments, assessing how well your programs are going. Negotiating license agreements to provide consortium pricing for things like ebooks, audiobooks, video streaming, subscriptions, databases, news sources, and library catalog systems. Some of that currently is coming through the Department of Libraries, but they can't always provide everything that the schools need. For example, right now we have a public performance license, which kind of covers schools for against copyright violations when we show movies. It's not considered necessarily automatically always fair use to show a movie in school. So having that performance license is really important to protect schools from any kind of litigation. And we at the Department of Libraries was able to help with consortium pricing in the past, but they're not able to do that anymore. So that means that license, which is so important in schools, is currently something that schools are going to have to potentially face on their own And the cost is cost prohibitive for a lot of schools, especially the smaller ones. So having our own representative to be able to negotiate things that are pertain to school libraries specifically is really important. Ensuring that schools adhere to the education quality standards in regards to library staffing and safety. Not all districts right now have their library positions all filled, partly because they can't always find people, so it's not always a intentional thing, it's an unintentional thing. But having somebody to be able to really look out for that and be, paying attention and following through when need be.
Senator Buell?
Thank you, Chair. Ensuring student, all right, so I'm wondering if that seems like it would be something that the AOE would do. And that's another issue that comes up every once in a while in this committee is, what is the AOE's responsibility in terms of enforcement and support? Because those two sort of go together. So that gives us something to think about. And it really, again, ties into the capacity of the AOE.
Yeah, and when we met with Lisa Helm the last time, when we met with her project just a couple of times and brought up a couple of school districts that we had some concerns about. And they said that they were going to follow up, but for somebody, she does not have the time to be chasing that, not so much chasing it down, but keeping tabs on everybody. It's, and we don't either necessarily,
Right.
and we're trying to do that just in our capacity as co-presidents. But it'd be really helpful to have somebody who could really be on top of that. That is your list.
It does, thank you, but I am gonna just follow up and I'll be done with my questions for you, but I'm loving all of these suggestions and I want you to finish for sure. I'm just wondering, in terms of us getting these into a bill, if they would make more sense in the House. In the H 807 or in this one, and we can think about that, but I just wanted to put that out there.
And I don't want to speak for
No,
Rebecca,
okay.
but we feel like these are examples of things that position, if it was added, could do. And we'd be happy to work with the AOE to say, here are some of the things we need.
Yeah.
We're just kind of outlining how that position could be beneficial to our students.
Thank you.
Right, like I'm not sure each of these need to be written into a bill, legislated, but as you're thinking about the importance of this position, this is why.
Thank
This
you
is
for
why,
clarifying that.
yeah.
Especially because we know it costs money. But we
Right,
also really support.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sort of collaborating with the UVM graduate program that currently is providing, as I mentioned, that licensing and a certification program for new librarians. So it's 6 courses that they take to be certified if they're coming from, a teaching background. There's different pathways, but and so right now, Charles and I both teach actually in that sequence. And right now there's 40 students in the cohort, so we're really hopeful. This is exciting. It's a good thing that we're finding more people that want to be librarians, and we're hoping that maybe they can help fill some of those holes, those gaps that are in these school libraries that can't fill positions. But helping to coordinate that, working with UVM to coordinate that and maybe help those students find their way to the libraries that people would be another thing that person could do.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you could just sort of wrap up, just because we do
Yeah.
have more witnesses on this, so
Absolutely.
we've got to shift, I'm afraid.
And then the only other 2 things, we're helping coordinate our mentoring program, which is already in place, and supporting, again, school librarians that might be undergoing challenges. So, again, not to discount the help of the Department of Libraries, but you can see that there are things that the AOE can do because we are under the realm of the department. We're teachers, so we're governed by the Department of Education. That requires a slightly different thing.
And just to echo what Senator Gulick said, we're concerned, or I think several of us are concerned with the agency of education and the lack of capacity it has right now. And this is just one example, and we'll see between our conversations with the administration and our president of appropriations, if we can advance some of these positions going forward.
Thank you.
Particularly, I'd say around Senator Gulick's enforcement. Development and things. Any final questions before we shift to Ms. Cook? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Cook online? Yes, okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Oh.
hear you, but we don't see you yet.
Okay, I don't know why you can't see me.
Okay? Something on our end or?
Well, you're short on time, so if you don't mind, I'll just go ahead voice only. My name is Rebecca Cook. I'm the director of Pulteney Public Library. I strongly agree with the Department of Libraries and the Vermont Library Association on all the positions they outlined, so I won't waste your time going over any of those. To reiterate, I did want to take a moment to speak with you today about page 11, section 10, 4004, possession of dangerous or deadly weapon in a public library. I do agree that library safety is a huge issue these days. It's definitely something we deal with all the time. My concern is that in small and rural libraries, where we don't have sufficient public safety, there is not any backup for librarians trying to enforce this law. Pulteney does not have its own police force. We have an elected constable and we contract some hours with the Rutland County Sheriff's Department. But when I've had to call for police backup in the library, sometimes it's a matter of days before I get help. Our emergency plan involves yelling out the side door to the gentlemen in the pickup trucks that hang out outside of Stewart's to come help us. So in that environment, I'm concerned that that leaves library staff to confront armed people and ask them not to be armed in the library, which would in turn make us less safe. I also have concerns about alienating a significant number of our library members who do carry holstered firearms or sheathed knives as a regular part of their daily apparel and who have never posed a security threat, but would no longer be welcome in our libraries. So I just wanted to kind of reach out and share my thoughts on that.
Any other comments, Ms. Cook?
That's just the main thing, that I'd like to see our small towns get more public safety and to see libraries be a part of that.
And then, as you mentioned, otherwise you're supportive of the bill or of what your colleagues have shared today.
Yes, very much so in regards to policies, accessibility, confidentiality, all of that very much on board with the Vermont Department of Libraries and the Vermont Library Association.
Terrific. You know, you have two great senators on this committee.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hello, thank you for including me.
Senator Weeks and Senator Williams. No. Any final questions for Ms. Cook? Yes, Senator Hashim, please.
Thank you for the perspective that you provided there. I appreciate that. I think, I guess my question would be, do you have any thoughts on making this rule a sort of opt-in option for libraries? Because librarians and the towns know the people in that town better. And, for example, my librarian in Brattleboro is in very strong support of this because of past incidents, and it's obviously very different from Pulteney. So do you have any opinions on making this an option for librarians or towns to decide upon?
Yes, I would love to see this decided on a town by town, library by library basis, because I do definitely see huge benefits for my colleagues in more urban city libraries. It's just one of the great things about Vermont, but also one of the difficulties is that the day-to-day life experience in the small towns and in the cities is completely different. And so there really is not a one-size-fits-all answer.
Thank you.
Great discussion, please.
Just a kind of a general question, that I believe, Captain may be able to address. What's the flow of funding to municipal libraries? Is it, or, you know, is there like a split between local taxes, property taxes supporting a library versus state funding or federal funding? How's that work?
I would describe it this way. So the funding comes from municipalities. Up there is, the Department of Libraries provides some grants to public libraries in the state, both municipal and incorporated, to support interlibrary loan, to support some summer programming, but libraries in Vermont are funded at the municipal level and by local funds. Some libraries have endowments as well. But most public libraries will go in front of their municipality on town meeting day. You'll find library directors across the state engaged that day in making a pitch for their library budgets and hoping that they get support from the municipalities. That's the primary source of funding for public libraries in our state, both incorporated and municipal.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming and thank you for everything that you do. And this has been a really terrific conversation. I feel like we've made some progress on advancing the bill.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you. Thank you so much. Judy, why don't we just stretch for a minute? We change the seats. Should we have budgeted